Wayside school time. Well, we finally moved past Allison's chapters 19, 19, and 19. She made it out. She is safe. And it was like she was stuck in a time warp, like I said, and the same thing happened at the end of the chapter that happened all the way at the beginning of the first chapter 19, where Jason stands on his tiptoes and tries to put the fishbowl above his head and then swallows his goldfish when he drops it. So it was like all of that Ms. Zarv's 19th story never really happened, but did it? So that's the question. All right, so kind of cool. We're going to move on 3 chapters in one. Chapter 20, 21, 22 is called Eric, Eric, and Eric. Mr. Kidswatter's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. Mrs. Jules, send Eric to my office at once. Oh, he sounded mad. Mrs. Jules was confused. When did we get a loudspeaker, she asked. Louis put it in yesterday, said Jenny. Mrs. Jules was still confused. There were 3 Erics in her class. She didn't know which one Mr. Kidswatter meant. Eric Fry was wide but not short. Eric Bacon was short but not wide. Eric Ovens was short and wide. Mrs. Jules chose the widest Eric. Eric Fry, Mr. Kidswatter wants to see you. Eric Fry trembled as he slowly stood up. The 2 other Erics smiled. The principal's office was on the 1st floor. It's not fair, Eric thought as he headed down to his doom. Anytime any Erics does something wrong, I'm the one who gets in trouble. He stood in front of the principal's door. His heart was beating very fast. He took a couple deep breaths, then knocked lightly. Enter, boomed Mr. Kidswatter. Eric turned the doorknob. He took 1 step inside, then stood with his back against the wall, as far away from Mr. Kidswatter as he could get. Mr. Kidswatter sat behind his enormous desk. He wore mirrored sunglasses, so Eric couldn't tell where he was looking. Sit down, Eric, he said. Eric moved to the small metal chair in front of the desk. A bare light bulb hung above his head. Mr. Kidswatter cracked his knuckles. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way, he said. It's your choice. I don't know what you're talking about, said Eric. I didn't do anything. So it's the hard way, is it? Said Mr. Kidswatter. Very well, you'll talk one way or another. You'll tell me everything I want to know. But Mr. Kidswatter pounded his fist on the desk. When was the last time you sharpened your pencil? Eric tried to remember, but he was too nervous to think. Wait, let me think, he stammered. We had a spelling test on Friday, but I borrowed... Where were you yesterday afternoon at 12:15, asked Mr. Kidswatter. Yesterday, asked Eric. I was here at Wayside School. I remember I ate lunch, and then I played kickball. Mr. Kidswatter smiled. Do you kick with your left foot? He asked. No, I'm right-footed, said Eric Fry. Grumbled Mr. Kidswatter. Have you ever gotten your hair cut at Charlie's barber shop? Yes, said Eric, 2 weeks ago. Aha, said Mr. Kidswatter. So you admit it. Do you know what a mugworm griblick is? Eric Fry turned pale. No, please, he begged. I didn't do it. I'm innocent. You've got the wrong Eric. There are 2 other Erics in my class. Mr. Kidswatter scowled. So that's the way you're going to play it, is it? Well, that's fine with me. I've got all the time in the world. He flicked on the microphone. Mrs. Jules, send me another Eric. 29 floors above them, Mrs. Jules looked at the 2 remaining Erics. Okay, Eric Ovens, she said. Eric Ovens shivered. His eyes filled with tears. Why me? He asked himself over and over again as he walked down the stairs. It's my parents' fault. Why did they have to give me the name Eric? Why couldn't they named me Osgood? He tapped on the door to the principal's office. Come in, bellowed Mr. Kidswatter. Eric Ovens gulped, then he walked inside. He sat in the little chair in front of Mr. Kidswatter's enormous desk. Eric Fry was nowhere to be seen. What happened to Eric Fry? He asked. I'll ask the questions, barked Mr. Kidswatter. But don't worry, Eric, he said gently. You have nothing to fear, so long as you tell the truth. He cracked his knuckles. Eric Ovens was very scared. Mrs. Jules always said that there was more than one answer to every question. He hoped he gave Mr. Kidswatter the right ones. Did you have a spelling test last Friday? Mr. Kidswatter asked. Yes, said Eric Ovens. How did you know that? I have my ways, Mr. Kidswatter said slyly, behind his mirrored glasses. When was the last time you sharpened your pencil? This morning, said Eric Ovens. Mauricia accidentally stepped on it and... Did you play kickball yesterday at 12:15? No, I played tetherball. Right or left-handed? Right. Mr. Kidswatter tossed a stapler at him. Eric caught it with his right hand. Mr. Kidswatter scowled. Okay, Eric, tell me this. Have you ever gotten your hair cut at Charlie's barber shop? No, but I will. I'll go right now if you want. You're not going anywhere, shouted Mr. Kidswatter. Have you ever heard of a mugworm griblick? Eric Ovens screamed. Upstairs, Mrs. Jules heard Mr. Kidswatter's voice resound over the loudspeaker. Mrs. Jules, send me the last Eric. On my way, said Eric Bacon. He hopped out of his chair and bounced down the stairs. He didn't bother knocking on Mr. Kidswatter's door. He just walked right in. What can I do for you? He asked. There was no sign of Eric Ovens. Have a seat, said Mr. Kidswatter. I just want to ask you a few questions. Sure thing, said Eric Bacon. He sat in the little chair. He leaned back with his hands behind his head, his feet up on Mr. Kidswatter's desk. He looked at himself in Mr. Kidswatter's mirrored glasses, took a comb out of his back pocket, and combed his hair. His hair was very neat and trim. He had gotten it cut yesterday at 12:15 at Charlie's barber shop. Mr. Kidswatter cracked his knuckles. When's the last time you sharpened your pencil? He asked. November 11th, Eric Bacon answered right away. It was 3 minutes before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I remember because my watch stopped. Where were you yesterday at 12:15? I was in the garden having tea. Did Mauricia step on somebody's pencil this morning? Asked Mr. Kidswatter. Yes. Whose? She steps on everybody's pencil, said Eric Bacon. Are you left-handed or right-footed? Demanded Mr. Kidswatter. I write with my left foot and I kick with my right hand, replied Eric Bacon. Mr. Kidswatter scowled. Have you ever gotten your hair cut at Charlie's barber shop? No, I never get my hair cut, said Eric Bacon. I'm bald. This is a wig. Mr. Kidswatter took off his glasses and glared at him. Do the words mugworm griblick mean anything to you? Eric Bacon shook his head. I can look it up in the dictionary if you want. Mr. Kidswatter shook his head. I tried that, he said. It's not there. He rubbed his chin. Mr. Kidswatter looked at each Eric as he pulled them out from under his desk. One of you is lying, he said. I don't know who it is, but I'll find out, and when I do, whoever it is will be very, very sorry. Now, I'll give you one last chance to come clean. Eric Fry trembled. Eric Ovens shivered. Come on, let's blow this popsicle stand, said Eric Bacon, and he walked out of the room. The other two Erics followed. Mr. Kidswatter rubbed the back of his neck. He looked at the white card on top of his desk. On one side, the card said Charlie's Barber Shop. Under that, in blue ink, it said, he turned the card over, Eric, Tuesday, 12:15. And under it, with a sharp pencil, Mr. Kidswatter is a mugworm griblick. So, which Eric do you think wrote it? I have my idea. Was it the two Erics that were trembling and shivering? Or was it the Eric that was like cool and collected and didn't seem to be very bothered and lied? I think it was him. I think it was Eric Bacon. What do you guys think? Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and read chapter 23, which is called Teeth. Oh, somebody's punching. Teeth. Something terrible happened. Rondi grew 2 new front teeth. Rondi was afraid nobody would think she was cute anymore. Mrs. Jules was giving a health lesson. Always brush your teeth, she said, and remember to scrub behind your ears. But I'll get toothpaste in my ear, exclaimed Todd. Everyone laughed except Rondi. She didn't want anybody to see her teeth. She hadn't smiled for a week. Mrs. Jules made Todd write his name on the board under the word discipline. At recess, Rondi decided to tell Louis her problem. Louis was talking to Dee Dee. Do you have any green balls left? Asked Dee Dee. I'm sorry, I've already given them all away, said Louis. That's not fair, said Dee Dee. Why do you never save one for me? Well, you know I can't do that, said Louis. If I save a ball for you, then all the other kids will want me to save balls for them too. Thanks for nothing, Louis, said Dee Dee, and she stormed away. It was Rondi's turn. She made sure nobody else was listening. Louis, will you help me? She whispered. Sure, Rondi. What's the problem? Asked Louis. Rondi smiled, showing Louis her teeth. Very nice, said Louis. And listen to this, said Rondi. She sells seashells down by the seashore. Great, said Louis. No, it isn't, complained Rondi. I used to whistle when I said words with S's in them. Now nobody will think I'm cute. I think you're cute, said Louis. You don't count, said Rondi. Well, thanks a lot, said Louis. I didn't mean it bad, said Rondi. You think everybody's cute, even Miss Mush. That's why I like you. Thank you, Rondi. I like you too. Thank you, said Rondi. Will you please kick me in the teeth? No, said Louis. Why not? Asked Rondi. You said you liked me. If you liked me, you'd kick me in the teeth. Now, you know I can't do that, said Louis. If I kick you in the teeth, then all the other kids would want me to kick them in the teeth too. Rondi scowled. Thanks for nothing, Louis, she said, and she crawled into the bushes where nobody would be able to see her mouth. Louis, Louis, shouted Stephen and Jason as they ran toward him. Terrence stole our ball, said Jason. I wish you children would learn to share, said Louis. Make him give it back, said Stephen. Louis started to say something, then stopped. He twirled his multicolored mustache. Hey, Rondi, he called. Will you help me? Rondi crawled out of the bushes. You wouldn't help me, she said. Why should I help you? Terrence stole their ball, said Louis. Make him give it back. Her? Asked Stephen and Jason. Me? Asked Rondi. Louis winked at her. Rondi's eyes lit up. Okay, Louis, she said. That's a good idea. That's a wonderful idea. She hurried across the playground. Stephen and Jason ran after her. Terrence kicked a red ball up into the air, then ran under it and caught it. Hey, Terrence, said Rondi. That's not your ball. You stole it. Drop dead, ketchup head, said Terrence. Rondi walked up to him, stared him straight in the eye, and said, In your hat, muskrat. That surprised Terrence. He took a step back. Then he collected himself and said, Dig a hole, Millie Mole. Rondi took a step toward him. Kiss a goose, Dr. Seuss, she replied. Terrence looked around. A group of kids had formed a circle around them. Go to jail, garbage pail, he said. Rondi held her ground. Go to the zoo, Mr. Jagoo, she retorted. Everyone was very impressed by how brave Rondi was. Now give me the ball, she demanded. You want it? Asked Terrence. I'll give it to you all right. He raised his fist in the air. Good. Let me have it, said Rondi. She smiled, showing him her 2 new teeth. Terrence shook his fist at her. You're asking for it, he said. That's right, said Rondi. I am. Her teeth gleaming at him. Terrence brought his fist way back behind him. Rondi closed her eyes. Hey, look, exclaimed Bibi. Rondi's got 2 new teeth. They're cute, said Jenny. Rondi opened her eyes. You think so? She said. No, you were cuter before, said Paul. Said Paul. I think she's cuter now, said Todd. They took a vote. 12 kids thought she looked cuter with her 2 new teeth, and 12 thought she looked cuter before. 3 thought she should just keep 1 tooth. So Ronnie decided to keep her teeth. They were good for biting carrots. Uh-oh, she suddenly remembered, and she ducked just in time. Boy, it sure did take a long time for that fist to come around there, didn't it? There it is. All right. So guess what? We are already on chapter 24. And remember, this book only has 30 chapters. So we probably will be able to finish it next week. All right, chapter 24 will start on Monday. Another story about potatoes. Look whose face is in the potatoes. You'll have to wait till Monday. Have a great weekend, guys. See you later.